This is Gemara Yevamos, a Daf Yomi. All the learning for today has been generously sponsored as a tremendous chos ilin neshama for Eliezer Moshe ben Shema, whose yard site is going to be tomorrow on the second day of Pesach, of 50th yard site. The learning of the entire Chabura on such an auspicious day, the day of the Leil Seder, the day of Yitzias Mitzrayim, should bring Rav Eliezer Moshe ben Shema a tremendous chos ilin neshama, as well as a chos shidduch for his grandson Shema ben Chaya. Emir Hashem, it should be an incredible schos, as well as learning should be an incredible schos. Shidduch Yisrael Chaim in Devarah. Tamartiu Bas Peralrach Shalom the Mizava of Vendeli Blumi Yudas Bas Asima Malka. As well as Liz for Shalom Shal Yis Veni Vedish Moment Tilam Tazim and Chlas and Achami Besiva Sar Bluma Bas Mindol Chaim Moshe Yeshua ben Malka. B'Sayir Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. We're holding on towards the bottom of Lamitesam and Bees. We're 4 lines into the medium-sized lines, and we're in the middle of discussing a fundamental idea about Yibum and Chalitza. What comes first? What's preferable? Yibum or Chalitza? And we saw in the Mishnah already that there was a bit of a machlekes. Exactly, is it preferable Yibum? Is it preferable Chalitza? Why? Because people do not have the right intentions nowadays. So says the Gemara, mitzvah. Originally, because they had kavanah for the right intentions, do the mitzvah yibum. Mitzvah yibum koydemes, the mitzvah chalitza yibum came first. But nowadays, mitzvah, people do not have the right kavanah. Amru mitzvah chalitza koydemes mitzvah yibum. Chalitza comes first. Omar Rabbi Bar Chama. That was a quote. That was a quote of the Mishnah B'chayris that we've been discussing. Whether yibum or chalitza comes first. It comes like Rabbi Bar Chama, Rabbi Yitzchak Chazru Laimar. They went back and they said, mitzvah yibum kademes the mitzvah chalitza. That yibum indeed comes first. Says the Gemara, now what's the reason why it was chazru? What's the reason why we're assuming yibum is better? Amrulei Rav Nachman Yitzchak Achshur Adari. Is it that we've become better? Is it that the generation improved? Achshur Adara, a concept, a phrase that we probably heard it quoted millions of times by Rabbanim, by Manhigim, that Achshur Adara, that what? Nowadays we've become better, we've become more kosher. Says the Gemara, is that true? You, Rabbi Racham, are telling me that Yibum is back to being at the forefront. Is it Ashur Adara? Answers the Gemara, explains Rabbi Racham, Meikara Savla Kaba Shal, Ulusayv Savla Krabanan. Originally, Rabbi Racham felt like Abba Shal, and then they learned like the Rabbanan. What exactly does that mean? Explains the Gemara. The Tanya we learned in a brayso. So he marries his yavam for ulterior motives, for inappropriate motives. He doesn't do it to mekayim the mitzvah. That is what keilu poigea be'ervas, a very strong lashon. It's as if it's an illicit relationship. And it's almost that the Vlad is a mamzer, Rahman al-Islah, and it's almost like zinos. If one marries the woman, l'shem noi, l'shem is, l'shem davar acher. But the Chachamim Ma'imrim, they argued, Yevamos yava eleh, mikol makayim. The Torah says, Yevamos yava eleh, which he does mikol makayim. In all scenarios, whether you have the right intentions, whether you have the wrong intentions, Lamaisa, do Yibum first. So says the Gemara, what is the Tan? And that's, so says the Gemara, Racham originally passed like Abba Shal, then he said, no, like the Chachamim, that there's an Amaila, there's an Adifas to Yibum in all scenarios. Asks the Gemara, Man Tana, Lod Dan Rabban, Yevama Yava Yaleh, Yevama Yava Yaleh. Says the Torah, the Yevama, he should be with mitzvah. That teaches us that there is a mitzvah to do yibum. Originally, before she married her husband, before the original marriage at hand, what was the halacha? There was b'chal heter. You could marry the yavam because you were never married. Nesra, when she went and married her husband again. Reuven and Shimon. When Reuven marries his wife becomes usher to Shimon. So says the Gemara, let's look to the perspective of his wife. Originally, she was mutter to the Yavam to Shimon. She married Reuven, she became Aser. And then, then she became mutter again. When did she become mutter again? With the mitzvah of Yibum. So Yachal, I would think, I would think maybe it goes all the way back to the original heter, all the way back that there's an allowance, like any marriage. Of course, one should have the right intentions when they get married, but are there caveats if one does not, if there are issues? No. So I would have thought the Tachsla Teir Risha in Tamlam Yavaleo mitzvah. Says the Teir Yavaleo teaches me no, that there's a specific mitzvah. Not that it's whatever it was. What was it originally? Let's look through the eyes of Rivka again. Before Rivka marries Reuven, does she have to marry Shimon? Of course not. She can marry Shimon like she married Reuven. She can marry Nunu once. So originally we thought that after Reuven dies, her status with her relationship to Shimon is also whatever she wants. Tachser leteir rishain. No, there's a specific mitzvah to do yibum. So man, this is Abba Shal v'achi kamer. This is what the Brisa means. Yevama yavayaleh mitzvah. It says Yevama yavayaleh teaches us it's a mitzvah. Shebetchila isala v'chlal heter. Originally, it was mutter. Originally, when you get married, you could do it for whatever reason you want. Nesra. Then it became Aser. When did it become Aser? When she marries Ruvain, then she can't marry Shimon, of course. Chazra v'hoter. Then it became mutter again. When did it become mutter again? When Ruvain dies. Then Shimon becomes mutter via Yibam. So Yachal, I would think, that you could do it however you want. So we're seeing over here, there's two fundamental ways of learning the pasuk. Is the pasuk honing in on the fact that originally you were allowed to do it with any intentions, or is the pasuk honing in on the fact that originally you didn't have to marry this man? Comes along Rav, and Rav says no. I feel the Rabban. You can learn that this price goes even with the Rabban. V'achi kamer, as we just said, Yevama Yavayaleh, 3 lines in the bottom, mitzvah. Shevitzchi loisa b'chalet. Originally, it's motor rati concept rati in kaitza. You can do what you want. Nesra chazra v'hotra. Then it became also when you married Reuven. Then it becomes motor again. Yachal, I would think tachsel teir rishon. I would think it goes back to the original heter. It goes back to the status of Rata kainza rata inkaitza. You can do what you want. Rata kainza rata inkaitza gita base. Says whoa. You're telling me you could, if you want, choose to do yibum or not. This is not gita bay. There's a zika. There's a connection. That connection should disappear with nothing. Aleimar, you know what it meant. The last line of Lamatesim Beis. Rata kainza rata chayletzla. You had a choice. You don't have to do yibum. Do yibum or do chalitza. Mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to choose yibum and not suffice with chalitza. So says the Gemara, we have two ways of learning this brisa that it could concur either with the Rabbanan or with Abba Shaul. Says the Gemara, Maresha, go look at the first part of the brisa. What does the pasuk say that you should eat matzah? Of course, the incredible siyata d'shmaya that as we're about to turn over to today's daf mem, what comes in for the first day of Yantav of Beizach? A Gemara about matzah, smack in the middle of Yevamos. Of course, the beautiful siyata d'shmaya of learning the Daf Yomi. Matzah steyachav b'makom kadosh, says the Torah that Aaron Ubanav, what do they eat? They should eat matzah b'makom kadosh, in a holy place. Mitzvah. What does that teach you? That teaches me that there's a mitzvah for them to eat matzah. As we turn over to Mem and Aleph, Shevet Chila, originally Yisla b'chal heter. Originally, it was a mutter, a carbon mincha. What's a carbon mincha? It's a piece of bread, it's a piece of matzah. So before it became a carbon, it was mutter to eat however you want. Nesra, then it became forbidden. Chazra, it goes back to being mutter. Yachad achslatei rishon, I think it goes back to the original status, meaning the original status, that you could do what you want. Tamulaymar, matzah te'achal b'makam kadosh mitzvah. No, you have a specific mitzvah to eat this carbon. So now, says the Gemara, that's the ratio of the brisa we just quoted. So the Reish is talking about a din of matzah, the Seif is talking about a din of yibum. Says the Gemara, the Reish and the Seif have to be parallel. Rav learned the price is going within the Rabbanon. So now I can understand the matzah te'achal b'makom kadosh mitzvah. That what? Originally was mutter to eat this carbon however you want. There's no specific reason to eat this piece of bread, this piece of matzah. Nasr became forbidden once it became kadosh, once it became a carbon. Then it became mutter again. So I would think it goes back to the original status of That what? What's the original status that you can do what you want? You don't have to eat this piece of bread. Says the Gemara, what? You tell me maybe you don't have to eat it? Says in the Torah a very similar question to you're telling me you could just go and marry and you won't want. You have a mitzvah of yibum. Says the Gemara here, you're telling me you could just choose not to eat this piece of matzah? There's a din that you have to eat the carbon. What is that? Teach us 8 lines down. A fundamental tenet in all of carbonis is that the achila, the eating of the kayanim, is that which gives the bailim, the owner, the kapara, the atonement. So how can you tell me the kayin could choose to yes or no eating it? What does it mean? It means it's not a specific mitzvah for this kayin to eat it. Any kayin can eat it. Ta'amalaymar says in the Torah, you specific kayin, you have a mitzvah to eat it. So according to Rava learned that the Bryce is going to Shita of the Rabban. What's the Shita of the Rabban on Ratza Kainsa, Ratza Ina Kainsa? That the din of Yibam is you have choice whether you want to marry or not. The din of the Rabbanan is you do not have to have the purest of intentions to do Yibam. It's fine to do Yibam without any proper intentions. You can even do L'Shem Ishas, L'Shem Noi. So then the Bryce fits very well, the beginning part of the Bryce that deals with this din of Matzah. But I asked the Gemara, Rav Yitzchak bar Rav Dimi, 15 lines down, the first one line is Rav Yitzchak. He said the Bryce is going with the opinion of Abba Shal. What was Abba Shal? You have to have the pure and proper motives. But says the Gemara, when it comes to Yibam, I understand there's 2 potential motives. You could do it for what? For the proper reasons to be Yaakov, to establish the name of your brother, or you could do it for inappropriate reasons, meaning you could do it l'shem noi, l'shem ishos. But says the Gemara, but over here when it comes to the achila, the eating of the carbon mincha of the matzah, what are the 2 kavanas that you could have? Perhaps you'll suggest there's a din by a carbon, similar to the Leil Pesach, which is almost upon us. There's a din about the eating of afikaimin. So at some level, it's like eating a carbon. That what? You have to eat a l'tiyavon, you have to have an appetite. You can't eat it once you're full, then you shove it in. It's true, you have to be full. But can't be achila gasa. That was that interesting middle level we learned Gemara M'sachim. But says the Gemara, so maybe you'll tell me when it comes to all carbon minchas, you have a choice. You can either eat a b'tei avayin, you can eat the proper way with an appetite, or you can eat achila gasa. Says the Gemara, it can't be, because achila gasa mishma achila. Achila gasa is not an option. It's not called eating at all. It's like flushing it down the toilet. Even on Yom Kippur, why? Because achila gas doesn't have a shmei achila. Pater miloi suuna. Ella, so says the Gemara, what are the 2 potential ways of eating this carbon? You can eat matzah, you can eat chametz. But says the Gemara, it says in the Torah, it says in the Torah, you should not bake chametz in their portion. And learn to Reish Lakish, a fundamental din in all of carbon. How amazing to learn such a din on the first day of Pesach. No part of it can have chametz in it, a special din when it comes to the carbon mincha. So it says the Gemara, what are the 2 motives if you're going with Rabbi Bar Chama, with going with Abba Shal? What are the 2 motives potentially? The first part of the Brayso when it deals with matzah. You can eat matzah, you can eat challah, which means scalded. Says in the Torah, eat it as matzah. Don't eat it scalded. Ask the Gemara 1 second. What is this challah? What's this scalded bread? What's your choices over here? Is it a matzah or is it not a matzah? If it's a matzah, gewaldig, then eat it. If it's not a matzah, what's your havamina to eat? It says in the Torah you have to eat matzahs. Explains the Gemara, I'll tell you. Matzi, I'll tell you this scalded bread is a din of matzah. And the Torah wrote again, to tell me it's ma'akiv, you need to eat it as matzah. Says the Gemara, and matzah. But when you're going to tell me that chalot, that the scalded bread has a din of matzah l'may hilchasa, if you're telling me that anyways you can't eat it as a carbon, what relevance does it have that it's din of matzah? Loimar sh'adam yaitze bahem yidei chayvasai b'pesach. For those that felt, oh, you're stretching it. Come on, it mentions the word matzah. Who cares? Is that such a big deal to mention the word matzah on Pesach? Says the Gemara, no, there's a nafkamina lahalacha from Daf Mem and Yevamos with regard to being yoitzi bahem chayvasai bePesach. Absolutely incredible to be yoitzi rechiyav achilas matzah on Pesach. Afal pi dechalte meikaru, you scalded the bread, you put into boiling hot water. Even the harder afye, since you baked it afterwards, betanor lechamayni karina me, it's called poor man's bread. Va'adam yoitzi dechavasa bePesach. Absolutely incredible. If no one gets chizik from this one, then I don't know what will give you chizik to continue learning. Says the Mishnah towards the bottom of Memon Health. The flip side. The previous Mishnah was when you get married, you're married 100%. Says the Gemara, what happens when you do chalitza? When you do chalitza with the Yevama, then that brother, the one that did not do Yibum but rather did a chalitza, is like one of the other brothers with regard to the inheritance. The father comes first. Hakohen says, "Yevimta, someone who marries the Yevama, Zacham and Nechas Shalachav, then you get the Nechas of the brother." Rav Yehuda Imer Benkach Ubenkach Miishamav Nechas Shalav. It always goes to the father first. So says the Gemara in the first din of the Mishnah that if you do Chalitza, you don't get it. You're like a regular brother. Pshita, what's the Havamina? Of course, you're a regular brother. What's the Chiddush that you're like a regular brother? Explains the Gemara. I would think that chalitza is b'makom yibum. Chalitza is in the place of yibum, and therefore v'nishkal kulei nechsli, a fascinating havamina. Just like we know that yibum comes along and you become the brother with regard to inheritance, you get his portion. So too, the havamina is that maybe chalitza has the same status, and therefore v'nishkal kulei nechsli, you should take all the properties. Kamash malon, that it's not. Ask the Gemara, Achi, hareu kecha min ha'achid, einoi elo kecha min ha'achami ba'ilei. Says the Gemara, if it's a chiddush, we'll call it lekula, that you don't get as much as you thought. Shouldn't say that you're like one of the brothers. Just say, Einoi Elo, you're only like. It's a minimization. Elo explains the Gemara, you're right. Mayibam the kansa. Maybe you should get a kanas and you shouldn't even be like a brother. You had a chance to do a mitzvah min hatayra of yibam, and you said, no, I don't want, I'll do chalitza instead. So maybe you lose your right. Kamash malan, that you don't. Then we continue on the second medium-sized line. Says the Gemara, Misham Av. There's a father. The father comes first. Av always comes first. Hakohen says Yevimta, someone who marries the Yevama, he then gets from the brother. My time explains the Gemara. Come, therefore you get for your brother. Rav Yehuda Imer says Rav Yehuda at the end of the Mishnah. If there's a father, then the Chasim go to the father. That's what we pass. My time is Rav Yehuda. So Rav asking like Rav Yehuda. What's the reasoning of Rav Yehuda? It should be like the Bachar that gives birth. And we explain that Ma Bechar, period. So we darshan it should be like the Bachar. That what? Just like a normal Bachar gets nothing until the father is nifter, so to this brother gets nothing until the father is nifter. Says the Gemara, wait, if you're comparing him to the Bachar, then maybe you should get double like the Bachar. Explains the Gemara, it doesn't say to be that he is establishing the name of his father. Yakom al Shem Echav Ksiv, and therefore he takes the place of his brother. V'loy al Shem Aviv. Ema hachi hechad lekav lishkol nachla tiskay mitzvah zibam hechad alikav toloy lishkol nachla loy tiskay mitzvah zibam. Says the Gemara, you're showing me how intrinsically tied Yibam and Nachla is. So suggests the Gemara, maybe it's really tied. Maybe the only time that you would get when there is a father, that there is a potential where there is no potential, to get an inheritance, maybe you will not do Yibam. Again, maybe when there's no father, and therefore you'll inherit this brother, so maybe that's when you do Yibam. But maybe when the father's alive and he's going to take the Nachla inheritance, if you're not going to get anything, maybe there's no din of Yibam. The Yibam ben Nachla, Rachmana says the Gemara, the two are not tied hand in hand. They have something to do with each other, but it doesn't say that it's dependent upon it 100%. Yevumi Yamame, you have to do Yibam, Vika Nachla, Shekuli, Viloi Shakul. And then you have to do Yibam. If there will be, there will be. If there won't be, there won't be. But we don't say there's no Yibam when there's no Nachla. Yaz Rav Chanina Kari Kamid Rav Yanai. Rav Chanina was sitting and he read in front of Rav Yanai. Yaz Rav Kamer Lachik Rav Yudah. Amarlei Paikara Karech Lebra. Go teach it outside. That's not the halacha. Ain't the halacha Rav Yudah. Tana Zana Kamid Rav Yochanan. Ain't Rav Yudah. Amarlei. Hell, come on. If you don't go like Rav Yudah, do we go like your Abana? Mshita. Yachav Rav Lachik Ravim. Amarlei Asami was deleted. Amarlei Lo Yis Halachas Nayach Umukshu Da Akshi Lach VaAvchis Ulmaya Avchis Shaber Avchis. Says the Gemara. Originally, you had it taught backwards, and therefore they switched the girsa. That's the way you remembered it, and that's the way it sounds now that it's a pashut din. But the truth is, it is in a tremendous chiddush. And now we begin the next Mishnah on the very, very bottom of Mem Amud Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Chilati Yevimta, who Aser B'Krei V'Isah, the Aser B'Krei Vav. When one does chalitza to the Yevama, what is the halacha now? You become Aser to her relatives, and she becomes Aser to your relatives. A special din of chalitza, that since you did not do Yibam, you have now forbidden to get involved in any of her relatives, and she and yours, vice versa. Says the Mishnah, continuing on to Memon Beis, who aser be'ima, ube'imima, ube'ima avia, ube'bita, ube'asbita, ube'asbina, ube'achayzazan shikayemes, v'achen mutarin, he asura on what she forbidden to you, ba'aviv your father, ba'aviv the grandfather, b'no the son of B'no the son of the son, ba'achav and the brother, ube'n achiv, period. So if there is no Yibam done, rather Chalitza, then you're also to her relatives and she's also to your relatives. Concludes the Mishnah, Mutter Adam Mikroivas Saras Chalutzasai, Va'aser Bitsaras Kroivas Chalutzasai. A little bit of a tongue twister over here. But you're mutter to the relatives of the Tzara, but you're aser to the Tzara of the relatives. So the simple way of understanding this is, the relatives of the Tzara, there is no Isser, doesn't extend that far, but to the Tzarais themselves, the co-wives themselves, they are always forbidden. So it says the Gemara, Ibailu, a fundamental Shaila Gazu Shniyas B'Chalutza Loi. What is the din of Shniyas, the secondary Erevas, those new creations of Ereva D'Rabbanan that we saw many times in the previous Gemaras? Do those exist by Chalitza or not? And the Gemara now explains the Shaila. Be'ereva D'Araisa Gazu B'Rabbanan Shniyas B'Chalutza Loi Gazu B'Rabbanan Shniyas. Maybe on a din d'oraisa, a real ereva, we created shniyas. But on a din d'Rabbanan, then we did not. Oidelma, lo ishna. So says the Gemara, fundamental shayla, is there din of shniyas by chalutza? Tashemalas bring a rayu asar be'ima, be'imima vilu, aim ima like a dani. What did the Mishnah say? You're asar to her mother and her grandmother. Did it say great-grandmother? No. So what does it show us? That great-grandma is a shniya, is a d'Rabbanan, and that's why I didn't list it. Dilma. Says the Gemara, 1 second, maybe the reason it didn't list the great-grandmother, the Seifa wanted to flip it around and say the brothers are mutter too. I would think then, when is the brother mutter? Specifically by the great-grandmother. But by the grandmother, I would have thought that the brother would be Ima and the mother Loi. Therefore, we did not list it that way. Says the Gemara, if your whole concern is what's the Achan, what's the brother going to say, so let's list it clearly. Say that you are Aser be'im ima, and say that the brother is Mutter bekulan. And then it will be very clear, says the Marakasha. That is a wonderful question. Tashema says Gemara, let's try again to bring a right to this din. Again, what's the Shaila? Is there shniyos? Are these dini d'Rabbanan of erva applicable to chalitza? Tashema, he says the Gemara, moving on to the medium-sized lines. He asura ba'aviv ba'avi aviv. He's also to his father and to the grandfather. Katani mi avi aviv, my love. Mishom chalitza. Why are you usher to the grandfather? We think right now because of chalitza. Because if you look through the grandfather's eyes, what are you? You're the son's daughter-in-law. From you looking up at the grandfather, but from him looking down, you're the son's daughter-in-law, which is forbidden. So as Gemara, right? Mishom misna. You know why you're usher? Because of the brother. Again, let's remember, everyone here are siblings. So you're usher now. Why? Because it's the grandfather's son's daughter-in-law, a different way of relation. But says the Gemara, we don't have to go so far as to say that there are shniyos, to say they are usher. Tashman, the second medium line, uben benai mailaf. What is the reason that by Ben Belai he's also to marry the grandson? Ma'ilam misham chalei savlo misham ishes aviv. Eishes avi aviv. One mistake because in fact he did chalitza. Therefore, you're forbidden on the wife of your grandfather. So we see a raya that we do shniyos by a chalitza. Says Marloi misham misla because the dead brother. Vavla eishes achei avi aviv. As we're going to see now, obviously the thread of the Gemara is going to keep on being. Anytime we're going to suggest. We say no, we could trace it back to the brother, a real erva de'araisa. Ask the Gemara, what second? I'm Imar. Allow the father's brother's wife, the great uncle's wife. Says the Gemara, Amimar learns the Mishnah as referring to the son's son. Not the great-grandson, but one generation less, referring to through the eyes of the grandfather. Ihachi asked the Gemara, I knew Achiv, then it's the brother, Uben Achiv. So why does he say Achiv, brother, and son of brother? Tani Achiv mina'av, because Tani Achiv mina'im. We could have learned both cases. Tashema, says the Gemara, I'll bring you a raya. Again, we're going back to our original Shaila. Is there din of Shniyas by Chalutza? The Tani Rav Chia Arba b'divrei Teira. V'arba midivrei Seifrim. Says the Gemara, there's 4 that are forbidden midaraisa and 4 that are forbidden midrabanan. It's referring to the chalutza after chalitza was performed. Avu b'nai achav u'ben acham midivrei Torah. Those are the raisa. Avei aviv avi ima u'ben b'nai ben b'itay midivrei Seifrim. So says the Gemara, Katani Mios. What do we see on the list? Avi aviv, the grandfather. My love. Misham chayleit. So we see that because of shniyos the rayis, the grandfather is forbidden. Bavla kalas b'nai. Lo misham misna, because the dead brother avli kalas b'nai. Tashma. One more try. It's why is the grandfather for the mother forbidden is not because they did chalitza avlakalas bita. Eloi misham misnad avlakalas bita. So again, the Gemara continues to not being able to have a raya. Tashema, one last one. Ben benoi, my lam misham chayles. Why are you forbidden to the grandson because of chalitza? Davla ishes aviav. Eloi misham misnad because the dead brother. Davla ishes achei avi aviv. Meimer machshar beishes achei avi aviv. But Ameimer says in this case it is mutter. Ameimer mukum la misham chayles because regards to shnius bechalutza. Like we are asking, he says this yes chalitza on the shniyas on the chalitza tashema uben bitay ma'alam misham chayles avla ishes avi imoi. La misham mista again the dead brother davla ishes achi avi imoi v'agav shniyas the erva lagazu el misham elam misham chayles shma mina. Here it is. So the Gemara ends that there is a conclusive raya. Just to speak out outside, basically what keeps on happening over here is we're suggesting that the Isser comes from the Kayach of the Yavam. We're saying no, it comes from a previous relationship with the dead brother. That is enough to make this woman Asr. So it's not because of a new creation that due to the Chalitza they are Asr, but rather it's the original relationship with the dead Yavam that causes the Isser. We'll pick it up from Mutter Adam Mitzvah Hashem in the next year.